what is so powerful about this? I think you'll find that with the Popdock as part of your solution, that things are going to be simpler. They're going to be a lot faster, and it's going to be easier to maintain and use this data as you go forward. So I said we get into comparison. Let's jump right into that right now. Many of you maybe have had some exposure to what is available from Microsoft's cloud migration tool. So let's talk about what are some of the things that are there, and again, maybe what some of those gaps are. One of the things, and there's kind of two parts to this. I'll be really careful in this, right? There's part of the cloud migration tool actually does where it'll grab some of the master records and open transactions, and it'll move that information to the Business Central tenant. So that's certainly one part of it. We're going to draw some comparisons to what E1 offers on that a little bit later. But there's another component to it as well, where they will allow you to archive a lot of the data that's sitting in your GP database, and they do use a data lake, and so they will move some of that. But some of the problems is they don't move the third-party data, right? So what does that mean? Anything you have an extender, obviously, is a pretty big one, but it's other third parties as well, other ISVs, any other custom data that you have. They aren't aware of that, and so you really can't move that to the data lake without, and I haven't read, without writing code. So if you're don't want to write a bunch of AL code to move that to custom tables or custom data lake, that's not there. Again, just to point out, it moves the tables to the data lake, so it actually doesn't move. It doesn't move maybe the smart lists, if we call it that way, where things that you're used to with human readable names, we'll say, and maybe the joins already on tables. It just basically is a dump of all the tables and dumping that into Azure for you to potentially do something with later. One other thing too, for some people, is that they don't actually need to move everything, right? They may only want a subset. Maybe it's just sales transaction history, or maybe it's, apply information on the payable side of things. Whatever it is, some people only need a subset of that, as well as like maybe the GL history. But we give you options on what you need to move. And then I think one thing that's fairly important too is it does require an integration runtime from Azure, and that's a fairly complex thing to set up. And so that's one of the aspects as well as you're trying to expose your on-premise system to a cloud-based tool. That's where the complexity and security concerns and all those things start working their way in. Okay, so insert the Popdock Data Lake upload tool. Maybe just to specify something real quickly, this is part of Popdock. This is not a special purchase. So this is just something that you will get with your Popdock subscription, and there's no additional charge. It does it does require the business or higher edition of it to use it, but that's really the only requirement. So we're going to focus on this part, is archiving a lot of that history that you're just not going to get with any of the standard tools. And then again, we're going to focus on how we can actually view that information as well. So what does the Popdock Data Lake upload tool do, right? It archives not only all of the system data, but it brings all your smart lists, right? So if we're talking about GP, it brings your smart lists. There's probably a few partners on here that have customers still on SL. So we have an option in there to do SL data as well. So it's, instead of smart lists inside of there, it's quick queries. We have some nav pieces in there as well, and we're enhancing those even more. So we're going to have some more of those standard lists that you would expect, as opposed to just table dumps. As well as we can move the entire database. So I call it two places, right? The lists that you use every day, and again, for the GP people, that oftentimes is their smart lists. And then the insurance policy, where you're able to back up the entire GP database that you want, just in case you ever needed to, go access something that wasn't in one of those smart lists. Another key point, right, is you can move third-party data now. So that's not an issue, right? Anything that was built in SmartList or SmartList Builder or even SmartList Designer, or even let's go way beyond that. What if you only have it in a view, or maybe it's on a custom table? We can move all of that data using this Popdock Data Lake tool. It will, like I said, it'll archive these lists and tables to an Azure Data Lake. So we're going to get into that part. So it does all of that for you. Again, oftentimes a tool associated with a lot of development, right? A lot of time and development. We're going to show you how easy this tool is to use and how it eliminates a lot of that complexity. And then most importantly, I probably can't say it enough, is you're getting the lists that you're used to using already, right? With the user-friendly names. If it says customer number or document date, it actually is, that's what you're going to see instead of the cryptic names that would be behind the scenes in the database. Okay, a couple more things to point out on the Popdock Data Lake upload tool before we jump into this. One of the most important things, and I talked about security just briefly on the cloud migration side of things, but this runs inside of a client environment. So that means we are changing really the paradigm. We're changing it to be a push to the data lake as opposed to a pull. And what that gets us is a lot of security perks as well as some performance ones as well. So that means you don't have to put a hole in a firewall. I work with a lot of IT people. That is one of their biggest concerns, right? They've tried to keep all these years. They've tried to keep their on-premise system. They've tried to ensure that it is secure, that people aren't getting in that shouldn't be getting in. They don't want to usually open it up to external cloud applications. And so for this, if you're choosing to archive this data to the data lake, this is a great way because it changes it to a push to the data lake, and then now they don't have to poke any holes in their firewall, no ports, none of those things, and that makes IT people a lot happier. The other part is that we can move the data as fast as we can extract it and as fast as we can upload it. So there's kind of two parts to it. It does not need to be run on a server machine, doesn't have to be running on the same machine as the SQL server where the data is stored. It needs to be on the customer's network. And again, it's good to have a good machine. The other part is it should be in a place that has a good upload speed as far as internet. So I have seen a few people that were trying to do stuff through a VPN, and they were in a remote place with a bad upload speed. That's not a good way of doing this, right? Especially if they have, depending on how much data they have, if they have hundreds of gigabytes of data that you need to move, put it in a good place. And then most importantly, I think, is that we do provide a mechanism to, if there are any errors that surface, we allow you to fix those.